So the first time you see something, it can be pretty traumatic. The first time you see fireworks, it might be scary. The first time you see an R-rated movie, it might be too violent for you. Heck, the first time most Americans saw a moving picture, it was of Thomas Edison electrocuting an elephant. Well, hopefully today we won't quite be so traumatic. You are seeing us on video for the first time. Stay tuned for the Verge Mobile Show. Hey, I'm Dieter Bone.
I'm Vlad Savo.
And I'm Chris Sigler.
And this is episode 1 of the Verge Mobile Show / episode 30 of the Verge Mobile Podcast. We are here live on video. It's the week of May 28th, and we're sponsored by the Samsung Galaxy Note, which is one of the reasons you're seeing video right now.
This is really freaking me out, by the way. I gotta be honest. It's really scary.
I'm actually going to turn off the stream, so I can't actually see what we look like, because it'll just send my computer into a tailspin of flash and doom.
Yeah, these MacBook Airs, these MacBook Airs do not deal with this much activity very well.
Well, I mean, should we just jump into the news, because it's really self-conscious to know that we're
I think that we should talk. No, we should talk for at least another 5 minutes about the transition to video. Actually, first of all, we should give a shout out to Brendan Murphy and Craig DeSimone.
Amazing.
And yeah, these guys are killing it on the back end right now. You don't even realize what's happening in New York, where this is all being put together in real time. These guys are the unsung heroes. Yeah. In fact, they should just do the podcast. We don't even need to be here, in my opinion.
Well, they're currently sacrificing small animals in order to make the technology behind this stream happen right now.
It's very true. And also,
that's the last I heard.
I just want to point out, I shouldn't be bringing this up, and Creighton and especially Dieter are going to kill me, but we are looking into, Creighton and I, as a side project, could be doing a Fast and the Furious themed weekly show called the Fastcast.
No, you're not.
Where we talk about all things Vin Diesel and Paul Walker. And so I don't know when that's going to launch, but and that isn't really a Verge project, but keep an eye out for that if you're a Creighton fan. Anyway, now we can yeah, exactly. Now we can go into the news. I'm done with my Fastcast promo spot, and now we can talk Galaxy S3, right? That's the big news.
That is the huge news. It's out in Europe, but more importantly, Vlad has provided a killer review of it. Vlad, would you say killer is the right word? I would say killer. I would say amazing also. Stunning. Comprehensive.
I'm going to let you drop the adjectives. And I agree with you. I'm going to turn on the stream because it's completely unnerving. First of all, seeing yourself speak. Second of all, seeing the little lag between when we have our conversation and it happening in the stream.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So there's about a couple of seconds. So I hear you guys speaking, and then your faces catch up with the things I hear, and it just...
Somebody on Twitter just asked me if my studio is where they used to film Oprah, and the answer is yes. I'm actually in Harpo Studios in the West Loop in Chicago, Illinois. And yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful space. Oprah doesn't need it anymore. Neither does Rosie O'Donnell. So here I am.
I do like the little halo of light behind your head, though, Chris. It does look very studio-ish.
Nice. Yes.
Are you drinking like sake or like hot tea or something out of a bowl? What is that?
Yes, it's hot sake. Which, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not a sake expert. But if I'm not mistaken, hot sake is like the lower quality sake. So yeah, I'm drinking low quality sake while we're podcasting.
Really? So it's heated up to detract from or take away from the low quality? Is that what it is?
I think that's the idea. Yeah, it's kind of it distracts you from the crappy flavor of the sake. The good sake is the chilled stuff.
Okay.
I don't know why we're talking about sake now. Can we please talk about the Galaxy S3?
Because I saw you drinking on the video, and I had to ask because it's a whole new media format now, and we've got a million more ways that we can get off on tangents than we did before.
Yeah, before I could get away with drinking this in silence, in peace and quiet, nobody would bother me about it. Now people are giving me crap about my sake. By the way, it's not sake.
I don't think anybody's giving you crap. We're giving you questions. We want
You're
to learn.
interrogating me on my delicious beverage. It's actually an espresso. I just want to point that out. I'm not
Is
kidding.
it Dunkin' Donuts coffee?
No,
I
this
saw
is,
you tweet that you bought some Dunkin' Donuts, and I approve of that.
Come
just
on,
by the way.
man.
So
There you
I have a two-pronged coffee strategy in my household. I use a bird grinder paired with a Zoji Rushi water boiler with a French press for coffee, and then I also have an espresso for when I need a quick jolt, a quick shot. And so that's what I'm doing right now. I'm hoping that I don't fall asleep on the air, and the only way I can do that is by drinking espresso. Can we talk about the Galaxy S3, please?
Yes, two things to point out. Two things to point out right here. First of all, just because we're called the Verge Mobile Show doesn't mean we're going to be any different from the Verge Mobile podcast, including the 5 minutes of prelude where we do not talk about mobile phones. So we've kept to that little tradition. And the second thing, Miriam, who we might know as Tango on Twitter, she emailed me and she had this awesome typo, which I thought I would share with my coffee-loving friends, which was the Tesla Roaster without the D. I just thought Chris would love one of those.
So it's not a gasoline-powered roaster. It's a.
No, of course, it's going to be electric, but it's a Tesla Roaster.
It's an electric roaster. I like it.
It's going to be supremely designed. Well, probably a rebadge of somebody else's design, but whatever.
Right.
It's Tesla branded. So, Galaxy S3.
Yes.
I think we're done. We can go on to the next topic. That was
we covered it pretty well, I think, actually.
Yeah. I mean, like I pretty much started off the review with the question, how do you review something like the Galaxy S3? Because we already had a dedicated podcast specifically to it.
Yeah, and the narrative arc of the Galaxy S3 for us, I feel like it was like crazy build-up, huge event, and we're all like pretty disappointed. But then it started building up again as we actually started getting time with it, building up to the second huge event, the review and the release. And Vlad?
Okay, you're trading off for me. Well, well, I would say it's another peak. It's a second peak, when it's a somewhat surprising one because Samsung's event. Let's not make any bones about it. Samsung's launch event for the Galaxy S3 was just a complete train wreck and a disaster. And so much of what is good about this phone was either obscured or confused by Samsung's message. The first thing to say is that there was so much branding at that event which either made no sense or, again, obscured the meaning and the purpose of the feature underneath it, that you just didn't grasp what Samsung was trying to convey to you. Like, the company is trying to oversell features which are handy and useful, but in one of those, like, much more limited ways. And it's also something that I get. It's the same vibe that I get with Apple hardware. I mean, yeah, very quickly I'm jumping to Apple hardware, but you know, if you're not familiar with the iPhone, if you're not familiar with the iPad, there is so much exaggeration going on, not from Apple itself, but from other people about how huge they are and how important they are, that when you come to use them, you're underwhelmed. They just work and they do a couple of handy and useful things, but you don't feel like your world has changed or been flipped upside down. You just gradually end up using them more. And I feel this analogy actually fits with the Galaxy S3. There's things like a picture-in-picture mode, which I believe is only for video that you have on the device itself. So at this stage, it isn't as useful as something like, let's say, streaming a news channel via the internet, which you can just kind of stick into a corner. You can reposition
I need to interrupt you here, Vlad. Are you actually going to convince me or try to convince me that picture-in-picture is not a completely ridiculous feature on a phone?
Yeah, I am because I've thought about this. There's
okay.
But that's what I'm saying. Right now, it isn't that valuable because you need to have the video on the phone in order to do that. But I'm somebody who, maybe it's a weird habit, but I like watching the BBC News channel. I like watching the live stream of Russia Today, that international news channel as well. And I kind of like the idea of having a little window that you can reposition across your screen on your phone while you're doing other things. Again, it's a limited utility, but it's one of those small things which adds to it. But then Samsung calls it pop-up play, which is like, I mean, what does that mean? What does that mean to you if you're not familiar with the actual feature? It means nothing. Then you have
it
smart
means
stay.
a little more. It means a little more than smart stay, though. You have to
Right.
admit.
And smart stay is just kind
Smart
of
Stay
really,
is the worst thing ever. And actually, ever since Samsung, like, I actually understood what they were actually showing with that, and not just like some creepy, your phone is watching you, your phone is watching you. Like, every time
Right.
I see my One X screen turn off and I'm still using it, I get really angry, and I like Samsung has gotten under my skin with that feature. I think I want that.
exactly. And this is exactly my point. It's a subtle feature, it's a neat feature, but you don't have to oversell it the way Samsung is selling it. Like the phone is smart.
Right.
Or the phone is more intelligent than other phones. It really isn't that intelligent. It just uses the front-facing camera. You still have the same screen timeout time as you usually do, so 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes. So if you don't touch the screen switches itself off. But during that time, if it recognizes that your eyes are on the display without you touching it, obviously you're reading it, obviously you're looking at it, so it doesn't switch itself off. So that's all that Smart Stay does, but you give it that silly name and people don't understand what the hell it even is. And that's those are just two of the features, and there's just a laundry list of all these additions, which are handy in, most of them are actually unique to Samsung, so Samsung gets credit for that. But Samsung just kind of buries and obscures them.
Well, Vlad, let me put you on the spot. I don't want to stop talking about the Galaxy S3. I want to continue talking about it at length. But
Yes.
I'm kind of in TLDR mode right now, and I want to know. I have a Snapdragon S4 One X in front of me, and a Galaxy S3 in
One of
front of
these?
me. Which do I choose?
Well, I'm holding the one that I would choose. Is the HTC One X.
Really?
Yes. I mean, again, there's a lot to say about the Galaxy S3, and there's a lot to praise about it.
Uh-huh.
But the HTC One X has this display which you just can't get away from. I stressed this in my Galaxy S3 review as well. When you're using the phone, your primary method of input and output is the display. So your most important thing in a phone is the display.
Yeah.
So if the HTC One X is the best display in the world, which as far as smartphones are concerned, I think we're in agreement it does, it's just kind of a no-brainer. At the same time, having said that, I spent half of my Saturday this weekend trying to install a stock Android ROM on the HTC One X. And it's such a reverse engineering feat that you have to perform.
I spent my weekend reinstalling Boot Camp on my old Mac so that I would have a proper Windows machine, because I can't find my netbook, so that I could install a custom ROM on my HTC One X. We did the exact same thing. I just didn't quite get there.
I think I have you guys both beat. I actually, a couple years ago, I started this project where I wanted to make my own digital picture frame that had some advanced capabilities. And I wrote it in C#. It was this whole thing. And it used a Samsung LCD, like a 8 or 10-inch LCD that had, there's some display technology that works over USB as a display, what is it called? Someone here has to know. DisplayLink, thank you. It has DisplayLink support. And so I connected that to a tiny PC called a Fit PC2, which I believe is made by an Israeli company. And they have some importers in the US. And so I bought a Fit PC2 that's Atom powered and has built-in Wi-Fi and everything, and literally electrical taped it to the back of this Samsung LCD, and set it up on my desk, and I could do a few different cool things with it. So in the last time I needed to root a device, I think the last time that I seriously put a lot of effort into it was with my G2X, because the stock ROM on that was just a steaming pile of garbage. And so I literally connected. I had the G2X connected to this digital picture frame, and I was VNCing into it from another machine, going through these insane steps. And there are like 5 or 6 steps where if something goes wrong, you're just completely hosed. And so there were so many layers of communication between my machine in another room connected over VNC and the phone itself, that if any one of those broke, then the phone was bricked. And fortunately, I didn't brick it. But I think I'm gonna have to bring that thing back out to do something with the One X as well.
Okay.
That's my anecdote.
Yeah, I mean, no, but the point is valid. I mean, I first of all stumbled across by Paul O'Brien over at Monaco, he has a ROM with just standard issue Ice Cream Sandwich 4.0 for the HTC One X. It's waiting. It's there. You just need to install it. But in order to do that, you need to have root access. You need to have super user privileges. In order to do that, you need to unlock the bootloader. In order to do that, you need to be part of HTC Dev, for which I registered, again, Saturday, I believe it was, and I still haven't heard from HTC. So it's just a whole bunch of, okay, I want to be more adventurous with my phone. I want to install some fresh software. I'll go the extra step. I'll do this. And then, oh, hang on a second, there's another extra step. And then, oh, wait, there's another extra step. And now I need to register. And now these guys need to let me know. And, you know, it grows exasperating. On the other hand, and this is the perfect segue back to the Galaxy S3, the Galaxy S3 stock software is actually good. Which I know is
explain this to me.
It's shocking.
Well, actually, no, hang on. Before I really want to get to the software, but like we started this conversation talking about the screen. And I'd actually, before we get into the software, because that's a really long conversation, Pentile doesn't bother you, doesn't bother you as much as you thought it would? What's the story?
Well, it definitely, the correct answer is the last one that you offered. It doesn't bother me as much as I expected it would. I mean,
you had some macro shots. You had a macro shot that made it look not great.
Right. I mean, but then that's also part of my job, I feel. You know, if it's Pentile, you need to dig it up and you need to show that it's Pentile, because other people might care. I'm usually one of those other people. Like, I don't make any apologies about that. I am extremely particular about display technologies for the aforementioned reasons that I consider it really important. But in the case of the Galaxy S3, yes, it's Pentile, but then no, I don't notice it. And the problems with Pentile are usually things like jagged edges, fine details looking almost imperceptibly wrong, but then once you see them, you can't unsee them. In this case, you have to basically bring the phone right up to your eyes and stare at it, and stare at really, really tiny, tiny little details to be able to pick out the fact that it's Pentile. So to me, that is not a relevant issue with the display. Actually, a more surprising issue is, well, I don't know about surprising, but a bigger issue for me is the fact that it has this blue cast, which we've seen on a whole ton of AMOLED displays. And, it's just the wrong color temperature for everything.
But the display's definitely better than the Galaxy Nexus, right? Bar none.
Well, honestly, I don't have that much experience with the Galaxy Nexus.
Because the experience that Dieter and I had at CTIA in our brief time with the Galaxy S3 was that it was, but I definitely like some more side-by-side time with those two devices to be sure,
Yeah.
Sure, but as much as anything else, maybe if you gave me Galaxy Nexus to use for a couple of days, I'll level absolutely the exact same complaints and even more severely. But as much as anything else, I also feel like AMOLED isn't as impressive as it has been a year ago, 2 years ago. It's just kind of stagnated at its level. I mean, okay, that sounds extremely picky when you look at the fact that this is an HD display with 1280 by 720 resolution and all of that stuff. But the fact is the strengths of AMOLED have not changed at all. Good viewing angles, not perfect. The HTC One X is better. Great vibrancy, extreme brightness when you actually have it turned up to the maximum. And I mean, also the Galaxy S3 is very readable in sunlight. Again, the HTC One X is better in sunlight as well. But it's a strong display. It just isn't amazing. It isn't amazing the way that IPS LCDs are looking on the HTC One X, and the potentially what we can expect from the next iPhone. So at this point, I'm actually in the IPS LCD camp, but I feel like that is a more advanced technology than AMOLED at this stage of proceedings.
For a long time, I feel like it was obvious that AMOLED was going to be the winner there, and then I think that technology kind of petered out. I think Samsung pushed it as far as it possibly could in a very short period of time, and it's not to say that they're not continuing to advance, but I think that they kind of hit a brick wall with pixel density and with the black magic of Pentile that allows them to get around some of the pixel density issues. And
that's the other thing. With Pentile, you don't actually have as many subpixels as with a regular RGB layout.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, it's 1280 by 720 full-size pixels, but because of the way things are arranged, you actually have fewer subpixels. So again, the definition is not going to be as high as a proper 720p display. But also, again, you kind of knew that with the Galaxy Nexus. A secondary issue is actually that Samsung seems to be over-aggressive with the auto brightness. So
Still?
the AMOLED display,
Oh,
yes,
God, it's
the
so
AMOLED
annoying.
display uses up a very significant proportion of the battery, which is very generous, 2100 milliamp hours. But then you also need it because of the quad-core Exynos processor and this display. It's 4.8 inches. It's going to use a lot of power. So Samsung kind of tries to cheat by having the auto brightness set at too low. I mean, particularly right next to the One X is just
way too low. And
night
they've done this. They did this on the Galaxy Nexus. They did this on the Nexus S. I think the GS2s that I've used have all had auto brightness settings that were way too low, and it's super annoying because you turn it off, you're constantly futzing with it. Apple does such a better job with auto brightness because on iOS you can turn auto brightness on and you can also adjust the slider, so it will still dynamically adjust the auto brightness, but you can say, I want auto brightness all the time, but don't go lower than this because come on, I need to look at the screen.
Come on.
And I don't understand why Samsung, if they're going to copy stuff from Apple, copy that because that's human-centric design. If you say that this thing is designed for humans, design it so humans can look at your screen.
It's not just that though. They need two sliders. They need that one, and they also need a slider for adjusting the light sensor sensitivity.
That's also true. And that's the other thing is that the auto brightness jumps around. It isn't gradual. So when the phone senses that light around it is changed, it kind of jumps into a significantly higher brightness or a significantly lower brightness, and it's kind of abrupt. It isn't smooth, it isn't gradual. But honestly, I do feel like those are nitpicks. Like those are things you can just kind of get used to and accept. The overall conclusion that I drew with the Galaxy S3 display is that if you never see this right next to the HTC One X, you'll be very happy with the display. If you do end up seeing it right next to the One X, you'll be like me. You'll be saying, okay, I know SenseForce sucks. I know TouchWiz in this iteration rather, is actually pretty good. And it's a tolerable skin. And it kind of justifies the guy who says, I gotta have my Wiz. But all that's being said, I just love the display on the One X and I can't get over it. I will go through the misery probably this weekend of actually installing stock Android 4 on the One X, and then I will have a joyous lifetime.
You know what's funny to me about the display on the One X is that we talk about displays at length on this podcast, and we have for a very long time, and we talk about them on the site. And I kind of believed that when you get into the top 5% of displays, average consumers, or just pretty much anyone that isn't us, can't tell the difference and doesn't care. They just know that it's a high resolution display. When you look at it dead on, it looks fine, it looks great, and that's all there is to it. But last week, I had drinks with Polygon's Chris Grant, and who is an iPhone user, and he specifically, I had the One X in my hand, and he specifically said, "Wow, I'm impressed at the fact that I can see it when you hold it on the side. I can still see the display." And of course, the One X has just an absolutely insane viewing angle. It's basically 180 degrees. So that was very unusual and impressive to me. The fact that HTC is using a display so good that somebody who isn't attuned to looking at 20 different phone displays on the market every month is still able to notice that difference.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I'm also saying. As good as Galaxy S3 may be in terms of software and other aspects, you can't do anything to upgrade its display. Whereas with the HTC One X, the display is there, and then you can upgrade the software experience.
Right.
So, neither of them is perfect. Both of them are very good, and I would say that it's just down to what you prioritize. In my case, I prioritize the hardware that's there, and then I can take care of the software.
So let me ask you something, Vlad. Would you, talking about the One X and going to stock Android, would you insist on the custom HTC camera app, or are you willing to go to a stock camera app as well?
I can get on without it. That's kind of.
The camera app is pretty good on the One X.
Oh yeah,
I don't
I
know.
mean that's what I'm saying. It kind of feels counterintuitive because it is very good. And the other thing with the One X is when you take a picture, it's so quick that you feel like an error happened and it never happened.
Right.
Is that quick. So not to take away from it, but it's given that it's a trade-off, I would say I like it, but I could live without it. Couldn't
Well,
you?
let's get back to the S3 because I interrupted you and you wanted to talk about the software.
Yeah.
So how's the camera on the S3 and how's the camera software on the S3?
Well, camera software is pretty much identical to the Galaxy S2 software.
They didn't
The
really
only
change much
real
there.
addition, the only real addition that they've included now is this burst shot mode, which is pretty much like the burst shot mode in the HTC One X, insofar as you can take up to 20 photos in quick succession. Then you can choose the best out of them. You can choose 1, 2, 3, 7, 11. However many you want, you can save those. You can save all 20 if you like, but it's just a burst shot mode. The actual camera, though, the quality of the camera is the best in a phone that I've seen yet. That's just my judgment on it. Like, I took a bunch of photos on the display. They look good. Most of the time we take photos with a phone, they look good on the display. And then I dropped them off of my computer and I was like, well, where is the noise? Where is the degradation of quality? Like, most of my gallery of photos was actually from the center of London, where there was just so much going on around you. You know, there are people close to you, away from you. There are details. There are buildings. There's just so much, and the camera captured all of it. Like, it's so detailed. It's amazing to me. I can't honestly compare it to the iPhone 4S because I haven't used one of those for ages, but I do feel like it's better. I've used.
Well, I was
the
really
iPhone
impressed
4S
with
camera,
the HDR samples that you put up. I thought those
Oh,
were
yeah.
that really was great.
I'll be honest with you.
The HDR mode works well.
The pictures look very good, but at 100% crop, they didn't look noticeably sharper to me than the One X shots. And I don't.
No,
You know,
they are.
Are they?
They are. I mean, maybe I didn't pick the best ones to crop out, but I mean, it's just it's a massive difference to me versus the One X. I mean, HTC, the One X camera is 8 megapixels as well, but the thing I always say is that its usable resolution is probably close to 3 or 5 megapixels or something more reasonable like that. I feel like the Galaxy S3 is the closest phone to actually giving us an 8 megapixel usable image. Closest phone outside of, let's say, the Nokia N8. It just is that good. The only thing,
and the 808, right?
yeah, the 808, which isn't on sale yet. So,
Yeah.
God, don't get me started on the 808. That's a camera, Chris. It's not a
really
phone.
is.
It's a camera that
with
happens
a
to have a kind
phone
of a smartphone sort of
And
attached.
it also, by the way, doesn't matter at all until it's using something other than Symbian.
Right.
Pretty much. The only thing I wanted to point out about the Galaxy S3, which annoyed me, was the fact that you can't tap to get auto exposure, which is something I'm pretty sure you can do with the HTC phones. So tap to focus also gets you to auto expose for that spot, which is really handy when you have a really sunny day like I did, and maybe you prefer to expose for the sky or prefer to expose for the thing in the foreground, because usually the two are mutually exclusive. So if you get the sky right, the thing in the foreground looks too dark. If you get the foreground image right, the sky looks just washed out and white. Again, the HDR mode helps to offset that, but I would like to just tap and get the auto exposure happening that way.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what,
I don't know
a
if it's in
good
the stock iOS
a good
software, but
HDR mode.
no. Sorry, I was
Go
just
ahead.
going to say there's software for iPhone that lets you actually separate those two things out, which I find really convenient sometimes. I want to expose on this, but focus on that. Anyway, that's all.
Yeah, that's
A
handy.
good HDR mode makes such a huge difference for like everyday usability. And if you had asked me a year or 18 months ago, I would have said, no way do I want software interfering with my picture taking experience that much. But it makes a huge difference in what you're able to capture on the street with a bright sun in particular. It really does.
I mean,
it's a game.
it still doesn't look as natural as you would get with just a straight one shot, which is understandable because of what it's doing. It's compiling multiple images at different exposures and giving you a composite image at the end. But exactly as you say, you can just get so much more detail in there, which actually is perfectly reasonable that you would like it, Chris, because it's the opposite of Instagram. You're not destroying detail; you're actually adding more detail into the picture.
Still making it unnatural, arguably, which is kind of
Dude, it's
counter
a
to my own.
photograph.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm arguing with myself here, but yeah, it's good. The one problem that I've noticed with it, and this makes sense because of what it's doing, like you say, is that if you're taking a picture of fast motion, you get some weirdness, some weird ghosting, just because it's it's taking 2 or 3 exposures and compiling them together.
Yeah, so Samsung actually, when you turn HDR mode on, says to keep the camera steady, has a little warning message.
Yeah.
Which can bring me back to the software. I don't want to re-review the Galaxy S3 because I'm aware that not everybody is enthused about a 4.8-inch phone, which again, it's big. It's big. It has good ergonomics, but it's a big phone, and I'm still keen to see something like this in the HC1S size range, like 4.3 inches. I'm sure somebody will do it and will sell a lot of phones.
Well, there's this philosophy.
Go ahead, Chris.
Go ahead.
No, you.
See, we're having just enough sync
This
issues.
is terrible.
It really is. We're having just enough sync issues so that it's impossible to talk over each other. I shouldn't call them sync issues. It's just it comes part and parcel with the move to video. I think that you need to relearn your dynamic when you're talking, because otherwise you get this weird train wreck stuff. But anyway, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, what I was going to say is that I think, and we've talked about this before, the fact that we're still kind of in this state where consumers, particularly Americans, but I think that they're kind of pushing this philosophy worldwide, believe that there is a one-to-one association. There's a linear relationship between the size of the display and the high-endedness of the phone. And I'm hoping that within a couple years that philosophy will kind of dissipate as 4.5 to 5.3 inch phones start to become standard place, and that no longer becomes a focus of attention. And they can say, okay, well, now we're going to do a 4-inch or a 4.3 inch, and people won't think that that's a crappy phone. Yeah,
no, I totally agree. But yeah, I do want to wrap up the Galaxy S3, as I was saying. The thing with this version of TouchWiz, first of all, it's called Nature UX. Again, completely useless, pointless, unintuitive, unhelpful branding from Samsung. There's pretty much nothing Nature UX-y about it. They have the water ripple on the lock screen, and that's pretty much it. But it's clean, right? The app launcher, the app tray is fully customizable. You can arrange it any way you like. You can hide icons. It's pretty much transparent, so you just see your home screen wallpaper behind it. There's just no noise and extra junk around it. It reminds me, in that respect, it reminds me of the Apex
colored either.
I'm sorry?
They got rid of a lot of the candy color stuff. I mean, this has been gone for a while now, but it's nice and subtle. They've got gradients that aren't completely overwhelming.
Yeah. No, totally. I mean, most of it, as I say, is just kind of feels sparse and just acceptable. Again, I feel like Ice Cream Sandwich itself is a more cohesive visual experience. But there's very little that you can point to in this version of TouchWiz and say, oh, this is a nightmare. This is dragging things back, holding things back. The thing that's going to hold things back is when Jelly Bean turns up and the Galaxy Nexus gets it a week later. And then your Galaxy S3 is like, yeah, we'll do it in a month or 2 months. Whatever.
That's a beautiful dream, Vlad. Remember how long it took the Nexus 1 to get gingerbread?
Okay,
and how long some
Nexus
S people have waited to get ICS. The Sprint version of the Nexus S only got ICS 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Okay, but whenever the Galaxy Nexus gets the next version of Android, you can be assured of waiting a minimum of 1 or 2 months. This is the most optimistic projection ever. You can be assured of waiting a minimum of a couple of months and before the Galaxy S3 gets it. And this is the thing that bugs me about this kit, the fact that its very existence is still going to delay the updating of this phone relative to a stock device. Again, we're not going to harp on this issue again. I just wanted to point out, I mean, the good things about the skin are actually, there's a quick settings, a whole bunch of quick setting toggles in the notifications menu. And again, Samsung has done a whole bunch of little tweaks that you can read the full review to actually dig into.
The notification screen toggles are the bomb. Like, that is one of the very few customizations over stock that I fully support, and it's something that, of course, CyanogenMod has been doing for a long time. It's awesome. It's great.
Yeah, but so like I say, the skin itself is extremely comparable to Android 4.0 in terms of user experience. It's not going to get in your way. I am just wary about, first of all, the immediate upgrade and when it might happen to the next version of Android. And then following that, the fact that Samsung has a really terrible track record with software updates. Again, this was something I felt compelled to include in my conclusion, because as awesome as this phone is today, you're not going to be signing up to the company with the best track record for updating its phones. Like, if you want to do that, you get a Nexus phone.
One important point I'd like to make is that I feel like in the past year, about the last year, most major Android OEMs have shown some amount of remorse and an apology around the entire update process, and some have kind of tried to repent a little bit. We've seen Sony Ericsson, now Sony Mobile. They did a really early alpha of their ICS update for some of their Xperias. HTC, of course, has started to become very good about that. Motorola has tried to be very transparent, not fast, but transparent. And Samsung, I think, is kind of a notable exception. And they are a very important exception because, of course, they are a huge, huge supplier of Android devices. And there's no question that the GS3 is going to sell tens of millions of devices around the world. So it would be nice to see them kind of commit to some sort of structure, even if it's not instantaneous, even if they can just put out a roadmap and be very transparent about what's going to happen with these devices once they're out there in the field. I mean, to your point, that would just make me a lot more comfortable.
Sure. Agreed. But I think we're done with the Galaxy S3.
No, I want to talk about
that would be a great time to talk about what happened with WebOS, because I don't know if you're watching the video, may have noticed, but there are currently firemen walking into my apartment. I just moved, and they have set up a brand new fire alarm speaker intercom alert system, and they decided they need to test it right now. So
that sounds really fancy.
It's great. It's amazing. I've got stupid pipes running all over my apartment and dudes tramping around in the background. So I'll be back when they're done. Hopefully it won't take more than 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay.
Good luck. If we don't hear from you for like half an hour, we'll just
check in on the video feed from time to time. And if you see open flames, the test has failed.
Well, like I said, the deadline is half an hour, and if you don't come back, then you're just permanently written off of the show. It's just Vlad and I after that.
Yeah, man, I mean, we're gonna miss you, but we'll plow on.
Well, yeah, we'll move on. So one more thing I wanted to say about the Galaxy S3 before we moved on is that you gave it an 8.5, right? And that that neatly straddles the Tegra 3 version of the One X at 8.4 and the Snapdragon S4 version of the One X at 8.6. So I think we can agree that regardless of which of these three devices you buy, you're probably going to be happy. Now, certain regional variants of the Galaxy S3, we've long believed will not be using the Exynos processor, which has proven pretty superlative in terms of performance. And so we'll have to see what happens with these regional variants. But I'm assuming that even the regional differences will still be S4, which is a great processor. So I don't know if that's going to be a concern or not. In fact, it may raise the score. We'll see.
I expect it might do, because if that 2100 milliamp hour battery stays where it is, and you stick a Snapdragon S4 next to it, that phone is going to last you a long, long time in smartphone terms.
Yeah.
I expect that will be really impressive.
The S4 sips power, relatively speaking, compared to my old circa 2002 Nokia dumb phone. It's still a power hog, but I digress. I think those days are gone. The days of going a week on a single charge will never come back. It doesn't matter how far battery technology advances.
I miss those days. I miss those days.
They were amazing days. Like it's like you don't realize. About to go off on a really philosophical tangent here, but I don't think that you realize just how much worrying about your phone's battery level affects your daily life. Like it actually has like a measurable effect on how you plan where you go and when you go there. And do I need to be near an outlet? Do I need to bring my charger with me? What happens if my phone dies? Like, am I going to be able to find my way home or to my hotel or, whatever it is that you may be doing? Do I need to be connected on email because I'm expecting a really important email? Like, there are all these considerations that didn't used to be there.
Yes, but Chris, look at this. And this isn't going to be very helpful to our audio podcast listeners, but there's a massive display on this phone. This is the thing. I mean, look, you can own a BlackBerry today. RIM is going to very kindly sell your BlackBerry with a tiny freaking screen with a tiny freaking resolution, but you don't want to do that. So it's a trade-off that we've basically chosen to make ourselves, to have a massive, humongous, gorgeous screen in our pockets, which doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, I think that opens up a whole new set of issues, right? Like because to a certain extent, it has to do with shelf appeal. Like you walk into a carrier store, and battery life is not the first thing on your mind. You're looking at how cool the phone looks, and what it's capable of doing. Can it play these awesome games? So you might buy a phone based on that. And besides, even if you were worried about battery life, sort of natural selection in the phone industry has eliminated a lot of those power sipping options from the lineup anyway. Like OEMs aren't working on like I think of what's a good example, like the Pixie, right? The Palm Pixie, which is actually I'm a little premature on this, but would be a nice transition into our next topic. If more phones were in that category, I think they might do pretty well. And that's not to say that we don't have like free Android phones out there, like the Optimus series is still out there. But I would really like to see more devices that have displays between, say, I don't know, 2.2 to 2.8 inches, single core processors which still run Gingerbread and even ICS just fine. Just look at the Nexus S. So I mean, this kind of gets back to what we were saying earlier about 4-inch displays, right? There's no reason. There is no good reason that Samsung and HTC can't come up with a quote unquote high-end 4-inch to 4.3-inch phone. And in fact, they have the 1S, but the problem is that the carriers just don't want to push it. I guess one exception would be T-Mobile's Blaze 4G, but I mean, who owns a Blaze 4G? I mean, come on, really.
But Chris, besides that, I mean, it's not just enough to have more devices in the Pixie form factor. Everyone is still trying to give you the same smartphone experience in spite of the smaller form factor, and I think that's the wrong way to go about it. Like, if you're going to sell me a phone in the size of the Pixie, you're going to have to sell me a phone without all the bells and whistles of a full-sized 4-inch and above smartphone.
Right.
I don't know exactly what you're going to trade off, what you're going to throw out. I mean, I don't think you should sacrifice the camera, for example. I think there's no reason why you can't fit a good camera module in one of those devices, but there's things like mapping applications, which just aren't as useful. So you do have to have a user experience which is custom to that screen size, that form factor. And, the previous user experience that was, Nokia's bread and butter, meat and potatoes, whatever other metaphor you want to come up with, was a much more limited user experience, in which case the much more limited screen size wasn't a problem. Whereas
you mean Symbian?
Yeah. I don't want to name names here. Come on.
So you're knocking Windows Phone. That's what you're doing.
There's also no, I'm not talking about the Windows Phone. No. I mean, we're talking about 5, 7, 10 years ago, like you were saying about the week-long battery life.
Wait, let me get this straight. You're worried about rocking the boat by knocking a 10-year-old phone? Is that what just happened?
Yeah, but I mean, there's a tradition about not speaking ill of the dead, and I don't want to do that. Okay,
fair enough.
Let's just let sleeping Symbians lie.
or S40s
terrible.
or
No,
S30s.
but seriously, I am actually interested in this new news about NEO and about HP. I think we had a little exclusive on that, and I think you wrote it, Chris.
We did. We blew the proverbial doors wide open. These two giant oaken doors were were out there, and I just blew them. I put explosives around the base of these giant French doors, solid oak, and I put I put explosives along the bottom
That
of
was
these
wasteful
doors.
of you, Chris. You could have opened them.
No, I for effect, it's a dramatic thing, right? So I put all these explosives around the base of these beautiful French doors, and wired them to explode through an Android app, and then went off with my Galaxy S3, my mythical Galaxy S3 that I don't actually have, and pressed the button, and these doors flew wide open. Kaboom! It was a complete waste of time. I just wasted like 3 minutes of this podcast. So the story is that a significant portion of the contributing members of the NEO team at HP, which is sort of it isn't core to Open WebOS, but it is part of the overarching project, and is it is particularly closely related for developers for the platform. But a number of these core players in that group left to go to Google, which is interesting on a variety of levels, right? Because I think that, as I mentioned in the post, even if you never were a WebOS fan, I think that you needed to be kind of impressed by what they managed to pull off. They were way ahead of their time in terms of implementing an entire UI, particularly on that form factor in HTML5 effectively. And so to have members of that crew go off to Google is very interesting. And we don't have confirmation on what group inside Google those guys are going to be working with, but there are two obvious choices, right? One is Android, of course. WebOS to Android makes a lot of sense. But then the other, I think
of Android.
I think the more intriguing possibility is Chrome/Chrome OS, because
that would be a waste of resources.
I don't think so. Especially, I mean, this is not the place to talk about it, but David Pierce reviewed this new Chromebook today, along with Aura, which, by the way, I'm extremely envious of, because I am one of the 3 people in the world who loves Chromebooks. I absolutely adore them.
Chris.
I use a Series 5 basically every day of my life. Reason being that it prevents me from doing a lot of things that would be a waste of time. I'm forced to concentrate on the task at hand, whether that be writing a document or doing email, because they're just not very capable devices. So it's kind of a very strange reason to be in love with a device. But so this new Chromebook is really awesome device. And I think, there's no sign that Google is backing down from this initiative, right? So, and they need to push that story. The story around HTML5 apps has come very far. You look at something like the Financial Times app for iOS, for the iPad, it blows my mind every time I open it, because I have yet to find a way to tell that is a web app once it's installed on the device. It's to the average iPad buyer, you can't. There probably is a way to figure out that you're looking at a web app, but I cannot. And so that's really amazing, and it's really encouraging for the future of this way of doing things. And so I think that there's a long way to go in pushing that story forward. And people that we're working on WebOS, and NEO in particular, which is the underlying application framework and the developer tools around that, to have those people join a group like Chrome, I think would be very interesting. But again, we don't know. They could be going to Android, which would be interesting for entirely different reasons. But we'll see.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the thing that I'm picking up on is, first of all, ever since HP announced that WebOS is going open source, I felt like that's just a way to avoid saying, okay, we're putting it in the trash. So as far as I was concerned, that was the writing on the wall for WebOS. I don't remember anything coming back from going open source, any piece of software coming back from that. Mostly because it's kind of a recent trend with, Migo, Mamo previously, and now Tizen, different generations, different names for the same software that's never succeeded. Samsung, I believe, was thinking about open sourcing Bada. It's what you do when you put software out to pasture. But exactly as you say, I feel like people should at least be curious about WebOS and its future. And to me, this again signals the fact that people don't see any future in proper WebOS going anywhere near the mainstream market, and they're moving on to new places. And I think the move to Google is pretty obvious as far as my perspective as an outsider goes, insofar as they're just joining up with Matias Duarte, who used to be their leader.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there are a lot of people. There are a lot of people from Palm that are now working for Google and other places. I mean, the Valley is a small place, right? Like people keep crossing paths there. But yeah, I think that this probably signals the if the open source move and the discontinuation of hardware last year didn't signal the end of WebOS, I think this certainly does. To have that many people leave at once and go to a quote unquote competitor is a real vote of no confidence. And replacing staff. I mean, it's not like they can just bring people in and boom, they're back in business, right? They need to ramp people. First, they need to find good people that are as good or better than the people that left, and then they need to train them, and it's a whole thing. And there's no sign. HP has not, since they made the open source announcement, they have never once indicated a solid, non-wishy-washy commitment to making to doing anything other than pumping a few dollars into this open source initiative. There's no sign that we're getting new hardware, which is all, I mean, at the end of the day, that's all anyone cares about, is whether this is going to be on any device. And there's no sign of that. So until somebody says, and until HP or somebody else says we're making a new WebOS device, it's completely irrelevant. And even then, even if it's a major OEM introducing a new WebOS device, that'd be a huge uphill battle. Because why are people going to buy this device now when they didn't buy a better supported device with more money being thrown at it a year ago or 18 months ago or 2 years ago? So it's not pretty.
No, it's not. I agree. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs, but then also I'm reminded of the fact that when HP took over Palm, Matias Duarte was not the only member of the senior team to leave. As soon as that happened, I mean, I believe John Rubinstein might have been the one that held out the longest, but everybody else pretty much, everybody else from the senior team jumped ship.
Right. And yeah, John didn't leave until recently, but he had been very, very quiet inside HP for, a year before that.
I mean, we presume he was inside HP. He could have been off on holiday, just, formalistically being part of the team. It does seem like HP had some idea which coincided with absolutely nobody at Palm, or the thinking of nobody at Palm. And HP's takeover was evidently, what was the word? I can't remember the word of antagonistic is the wrong one, but it's when you take over a company that doesn't necessarily want to be taken over by you. I'm sure HP wasn't Palm's first choice. A lot of disagreements happened, and now maybe the lower members, the guys from lower down the rungs, are also escaping the ship.
Well, I think that at the very beginning of the HP purchase, I think that there was some enthusiasm both inside HP and inside Palm that there might be a way to make this work. And that probably quickly vanished once the CEOs started, you started getting that CEO musical chair stuff going on. Leo came in, Mark Hurd left, Leo came in, and Leo was forced out, and Meg came in, and it's, I don't think you can say really anything positive about Leo. From a consumer
is there a crazy
technology
thought here? Is there a crazy thought here about what if Mark Hurd has stayed around at HP and gone through with whatever initial vision they had for the Palm takeover, maybe that would have been a success. Do you think that is a viable possibility, or am I just clutching at straws?
No, I think anything's possible. You know, the problem is that there are so many variables. You go back
Yeah.
and look at what happened in the past 4 years to that company, not just post HP, but pre HP, with the fact that they started with the Sprint exclusive, and the fact that they had basically a 6-month delay between announcement and release. All these factors could have had a really significantly detrimental effect on the market performance of these devices. And we don't know what combination of those decisions and realities ultimately did them in, but they certainly contributed, right?
Yeah.
I just realized that I'm shaking my camera. So there's no earthquake in Chicago. Since I've lived here, I moved here in about 10 years ago.
Are you doing it by hand?
I've only lived through one earthquake in Chicago, which is extremely rare. And it was I think a 5.0 in southern Illinois that we felt all the way in Chicago. So it's just like it was like 6 or 6:30 in the morning, and my bed was just very gently kind of shaking. That is the one and only earthquake I've ever experienced in this city. So when you see my camera shaking, I just want to apologize. You don't have to worry about my safety or well-being. The earth is not moving. It's just me.
Okay. And I can actually distribute a bit.
I just did it again. Sorry.
I can distribute a bit of quick trivia that I picked up recently. The Richter scale, which is the one, the scale for the magnitude of an earthquake,
Mm-hmm.
It goes up literally in orders of magnitude. So something rated at 5 is 10 times weaker than something rated at 6, which in turn is 10 times weaker than something rated at 7. So a magnitude 8 earthquake is something like, yes, it's 1,000 times stronger than a magnitude 5. Which for
That's
whatever
a very
reason,
strong earthquake.
yeah, for whatever reason, I had never known that about the Richter scale. Yeah, I was just like, well, it's a scale. So I kind of know that an 8 and above is pretty crazy and scary, and a 5 and a 6 is pretty tolerable. But now I know that.
If you lived in San Francisco or Tokyo, you would probably have known that by now.
Potentially.
It's just that London is not really a seismic zone, as far as I know.
No, London is pretty much nowhere near any tectonic plate boundaries.
No activity.
We're pretty clever in that respect. I do have to say, all these cities that are built, just erected on tectonic plate boundaries, like San Francisco, are just bonkers to me. Like, I really love the idea of San Francisco. I think it's a great city, but it's in the wrong freaking place. Like, there are streets which actually span the San Andreas Fault. So while the ground underneath you, the physical element of which you stand, is moving in two opposing directions, you decide that you will build a cement road on top of that and expect it to last how long?
I think that there is a very deep sociological study to be done there around the creation of cities in not just earthquake zones, but in like disaster zones in general. Like Miami is another good example. They're getting pounded by disastrous hurricanes once or twice a year, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that there's a whole that's got to be a whole like topic of why civilization has created these wonderful places in really dangerous areas. And you're right, San Francisco. I mean, like they had a just a tremendously devastating earthquake in the early part of the 1900s. But of course, Chicago, the Great Chicago Fire, in the 1800s, Mrs. O'Leary's cow, that whole story, knocked over a lantern and set the whole city on fire. So, you don't necessarily need a natural disaster to completely destroy a town. Chicago came back too, and I'm sure.
Chris, the other thing is, I live in London. London has burnt more often than, gosh, I don't know, RIM's stock price.
Oh, I see what you did there. That was nice. That was very, very nice.
And the news today with respect to RIM, let's squeeze that in, is that its stock has halted trading because it has hired, I believe, JP Morgan to advise it on a big strategic reassessment, which is likely to result in a bunch of job cuts. So
Right.
things have gotten so dire and severe that the stock market has decided not to trade those shares because they expect people might go crazy and just completely nuke the share price, which is already at a really, really low level.
It's actually really
But
surprising
You
to
might
me
say they're
that
having an emergency right now.
oh man, are you kidding me? It's really surprising to me. By the way, everyone, that was Dieter Bone coming to us live from San
and his fire
Francisco.
alarm.
There is apparently an earthquake. Yeah, his fire alarm. So it's actually really surprising to me that this kind of set off this firestorm on the stock market because it was known there was that Bloomberg. I think it was Bloomberg piece that went around. Was it 2.5, 3 months ago, where they were talking about the fact that they were going to hire both a Canadian and an international bank to advise them on what their next move should be. I think that that Torsten talked about it a little bit on the last earnings call. So I don't understand why this is a surprise. The fact that they're bringing in outside help to figure out what to do. I don't get it.
No, I'm with you. People should have been already projecting for that. I mean, I believe 2 or 3 days ago at most, it was over the weekend that this popped up. There was speculation that Rim is looking to chop 2,000 jobs out of a 6,500 overall number of employees. So that's something like 12% of its whole workforce just being chopped off. So, that projection, that expectation materialized over the weekend, but maybe the market didn't buy into the rumors until it was actually materialized in this hiring at the company. But then, as you say, Chris, Rim has already foreshadowed its own demise, which a lot of people would have seen.
I wouldn't be quite that dire
releasing.
necessarily, but yes, yeah.
It's a demise, Chris. I believe we're witnessing a demise.
I hope for the sake of the market, I hope that you're wrong. Not because I'm a particularly big Rim fan, but because I'm a fan of competition.
I agree with you. I am going to be happy that I don't have to learn everything about WebOS and whatever Rim does with its next failure of BlackBerry operating system. It's going to keep my life simpler to only have to know about Android and iOS, but it isn't as diverse. It isn't as fascinating.
Windows Phone,
for other people.
Broham. Windows Phone.
Windows Phone is going to have to prove itself to me. Honestly, I'm tired of Windows Phone. I'm tired of calling it the third ecosystem by default.
I'm excited
either
for
step
Apollo.
up your game, make it to 5% market share, or step off.
I'm excited for Apollo. So
I don't know why I'm talking trash against Windows Phone. I'm not a hater of Windows Phone.
Nokia has actually made some strides in China, right? That kind of made the rounds in the past few days. The fact they're really kind of gaining some inroads there, and that's not to say that China's particularly high margin market for them, probably, but that's good. And
no, that was actually quite hilarious. The data about Windows Phone in China, somebody came up with that, saying Windows Phone had more market share than iOS in China, and then somebody else, I think much more reliable statisticians, showed data that it doesn't.
Well, look.
Windows Phone launched in China. We can say that.
I'm trying to spin Windows Phone as hard as I can here. I will say this. I've been saying, but before the launch of Mango, I was saying, I can't wait for Mango. And actually, I could live with Mango. I could realistically live with Mango. I'm still trying to live with Mango/Tango on the 900. The only big problem is the lack of a decent Gmail client and the fact that when you go to Gmail's mobile view in Mobile Internet Explorer, it doesn't it takes you to the WAP site, which is like such a slap in the face. Like I totally get why Google hasn't bothered to invest the time into making their gorgeous iOS web view work on Windows Phone, but for goodness sakes, Google, perhaps more than any other company in the world, is known for spending random amounts of money and time on things that aren't necessarily going to pay off. They aren't necessarily going to see return on investment with. So for the benefit of the Windows Phone users out there, however few there may be, please just get that web view working. I would be in hog heaven if they got that working. I would finally be in a situation with Mango where I could use a Windows Phone device full time and not feel weird or paralyzed by it like I do now. And so, but anyway, back to my original point. I was saying I was really excited about Mango. Mango came out. It didn't, it wasn't the blockbuster that anyone wanted it to be. Tango, of course, isn't really anything. And then Apollo, once again, I'm saying, oh, I'm excited about Apollo, but, at some point we need to stop being excited about versions of Windows Phone and just, see a really good platform out there. So,
Yes.
yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I feel really weird about it because there are enough compelling third-party apps on that platform now so that I really do have my 900 within a stone's throw of being usable full time. For me, Gmail is the killer. I can't think of, off the top of my head, I can't think of any other single thing on there. I guess the IM experience isn't great for a variety of reasons. The multitasking system is just wonky enough so that it doesn't work very well. And you need to store your credentials on a remote server that you don't know anything about. But I have Google two-step authentication working with it because there's a third-party client that does it just fine. Google Voice works great. It's
Chris, you're talking yourself into it, man.
If
you have to give yourself
Gmail.
so many reasons why it's worth doing, nah. I mean, to me, I can't even begin to start listing the reasons why I like using Android. Never mind why I like using it, why I feel the need for it.
Well, you're trying to. By the way, I think Dieter's back.
I'm back.
Nice.
Yes.
Having lived through the greatest nightmare of my entire life, that was horrendous. And I'm sorry for letting some of the audio get through a little bit. But I'm back, set up. I heard Chris's rant about Windows Phone, and I agree wholeheartedly.
Wait, you agree with what? With what side of it?
That you should keep trying and failing to make it your primary main phone until it is, and that Vlad and I can sit back and watch you make excuses for why you're still doing that.
Look, Windows Phone is very, very simple. Microsoft needs to stop cooking and serve up something that's actually done. All right, so no more excuses.
It is done.
This is if you guys think about,
it's just not done in a place where we can use it.
Presented as done. It's being served up, but it's not fully cooked.
No,
it's done.
Look, guys.
No, here it is. Windows Phone is done. It's just that they've put it on a menu along with T-bone steak and lobster, but really it's just tarted up mac and cheese.
Mac and cheese is delicious.
Mac and cheese is delicious, but they should quit selling it like it's gourmet,
Guys,
like it's a smartphone.
These analogies are bad. I've got a really good analogy for you. If you think back to MWC of this year, are you thinking with me? Barcelona?
I am imagining
sunny weather.
Yes.
Okay. Well, think about that time when you and a group of our colleagues were really, really hungry, and you had me as your guide to take you to a place to eat. Okay, if you remember that time and how long it actually took me to find the proper place for us to eat, and the fact that you nearly killed me on the way there because I said it was like 2 blocks over, and I think it was something like 10. That's where Microsoft finds itself right now with Windows Phone. It's
no.
Oh no, guys, seriously, it's one block over. It's 1 block over. Well, where is it?
No, here's the thing. Okay. And you need to take this challenge for yourself. I sound like a total Microsoft shill right now, but it needs to be said. I challenge you to use a Windows Phone device and tell me exactly what's missing. I've told you exactly what's missing from my experience. I need better Gmail. That's it. I can't find anything else that prevents me from using the 900 full time. So I put it on you guys to tell me exactly what it is that's missing from Windows Phone for you that prevents you from using it full time.
What prevents me from using it is proper, not proper, because I mean, what's proper? I mean, really, but a more robust backgrounding and multitasking experience. I need to know that an IRC app and an IM app and Skype are going to be able to receive incoming messages when I come back to them. If that means full multitasking, great. If that means what iOS does, where like some things are sort of multitasking but not, but at least there's some really clear defined boundaries of what is and isn't running, fine. If that means all of those apps actually using Microsoft's currently defined boundaries because they're just not doing it right now, fine. But it's just not there yet for the specific tasks that I need on a phone. And I'm with
So you mean
I also
multitasking that's as good as the multitasking on the One X? That's what you're looking for.
It's not much to ask, is it?
No, it's not. It really isn't.
I've got some alternative answers for what's missing. First of all, there isn't a robust gathering area for notifications. I still feel Android is the leader in that respect. I feel iOS caught up, but still isn't as nice and clean with pulling your notifications together as Android is. And I think Windows Phone is behind both of those. I think Windows Phone is severely missing a properly usable home screen, which is going to be controversial, but ultimately I'm only ever really seeing 6 or 8 tiles on my home screen. And we've heard this tale about live tiles for ages, but I don't see much live action or activity on my home screen with a Windows Phone. I don't see any use to any animations apart from letting me know that the phone hasn't frozen up. I actually really like the immediate and glanceable nature of seeing 4 unread emails, 3 missed calls, 2 messages, etc. But that only takes 3 tiles, and you're taking up 60% of my screen to do that. I don't like that. It's not mature to me. Like, maybe for some people who only use those particular things and use them extensively and really in depth, and maybe the Facebook integration works in that respect, Facebook messaging, maybe it works for them, but not for me. Like, I really like to have a home screen that can give me access to a whole bunch of things. I like to actually stick to just one home screen with Android and just stack it up with folders and icons and applications and useful things, and then maybe have a secondary one for the rare few widgets that I use, and that's it. And Windows Phone isn't even close to
on Android. I've got just a mix of like calendar and contact widgets and folders. So yeah,
Pure calendar is awesome.
Windows Phone has a really easy solution to this. Give me a pinch to zoom option where the current view of the home screen can just be shrunken down. So all the tiles can be shrunken down. Maybe if I have like a bunch of contacts that I have pinned to my start menu, I don't want to scroll 15 times to get to them. I just want to be able to see more of it, basically. And this also works really well with the expected increase in resolution for Windows Phone Apollo, right? So you raise the resolution, you give people the option to see more of the home screen, more of the live tiles. It's a win-win. But it doesn't exist.
I think that some more flexibility for the size and shape of the live tiles is actually in order. I'd like to see some more. I get that Metro is all about the whole square look, and they can still be, rectangles. They don't need to be like rhombuses or trapezoids, although that would be cool. But having, say you have, I'm trying to think of a good example. The calendar application in Windows Phone should have a number of selectable live tiles for size and for display, for what it looks like, for what it shows, for the information that it shows. And right now, I don't think that I've ever seen. There might be a couple weather apps I've seen it in, but by and large, you don't have a lot of configurability for what ends up showing up in the live tile. And I've definitely never seen a Windows Phone app that allows you to choose between a half width and a full width live tile. I've never seen that. Yeah, I don't know how do we get on the.
I was just going to say this is a really awesome digression.
Windows Phone? I was living the nightmare of the 20-minute long.
I'm pretty sure we got to Windows Phone via RIM. It usually happens that way. We talk about our disappointment with RIM, and then we stumble into Windows Phone.
Have you guys, when I was living that nightmare, talked about the new iPhone backplate images that leaked out?
No. We should do,
because I would like to. So, a couple images have leaked out at 9 to 5 Mac. They show a slightly elongated iPhone with the headphone jack at the bottom of the device, next to what looks like a larger area for speakers and the smaller dot connector, and supposedly it will probably add up to a screen that's the 1136 by 640, which is just shy of a 4-inch screen. And I gotta it's not a radical new design, but but I like it better than the straight glass. It looks like they're going to have some sort of, two-tone thing going on there. Maybe that's a metal back there. I think it looks pretty good.
The one thing I don't like about it is the grill along the bottom. It doesn't look micro drilled the way they do on like the MacBook, or of course like HTC is doing with the One X. They look like giant holes, and it looks bad. And hopefully that's just that's what I'm hoping. Yeah. Another thing that I'll point out is that the new dock connector looks about the same size as an MHL/micro USB port. I'm sure it's not either one of those things, but it's about the same size.
But what I was going to say is I'm in agreement with Dieter. I think we are getting a really good idea, even if these are not legitimate images, because we've seen them coming from a couple of different sources, and they seem to corroborate each other of this elongated 4-inch-ish iPhone case. Even if they're not legitimate images, they're shaping up to be showing us where the next iPhone is going. So we're most likely going to get this 4-inch iPhone where the screen has just been stretched vertically. I can't offer many complaints about the appearance of it, about the look of it, but it kind of bothers me that Apple is keeping the straight edges all around the sides. It's probably to be expected because it's consistent with the appearance of the iPhone 4 and the iPhone 4S, but I still don't think they're good ergonomically. Like I really think
you prefer like the old, like you like the iPhone/iPhone 3G.
Yeah,
kind of.
yeah. I mean, I didn't think I did. I mean, the first time I saw the iPhone 4 design, I was like, yeah, now this is a manly phone. This is a phone for me. Finally, none of this fancy schmancy, curved iPhone nonsense. But actually, what turns out is that the devices with the curved backs are the absolutely most comfortable ones that you can have. And I do feel like a lot of companies are making this trade-off of going for more angular, more rigid-looking phones because they know they're more appealing to people, because they know they will sell better. They will be, as Chris was saying earlier, they will be more appealing when you just see them in the store. But actually, the ones with a rotund back, the ones that just kind of look frumpy, I guess, are really comfortable ones. And this includes, like you say, the early iPhone generations, the 3GS. It includes the Nexus S, which I love. It's one of the most economic phones. And it includes the Galaxy S3.
Yeah, fair enough. But the Galaxy S3 is not the most attractive phone in the world either.
No, exactly. Yeah. And I know that because I've had a lot of grief for my rating for its design. People are like, no, dude, you do not know what you're talking about. Do you have your glasses on, etc., about its appearance? And I really don't care because when you start using a phone, the only thing you're looking at is its display. The actual back of it, the design of the back of it doesn't matter when you're using the phone. How it looks does matter, I mean. Yeah. It physically matters how it feels in your hand.
Yeah.
And it feels just fine.
So
now, that's actually
the larger screen. Like, do you guys think we're going to see something significantly different with iOS 6 to take advantage of that extra space, or is it just going to be an extra row of icons, whatever? Like,
yeah,
how do you think they're going to manage that?
Extra row of icons and stretching out content within apps, maybe adding more menu rows or something, but that would be it, I guess.
I think that they, so I think it's a foregone conclusion that in iOS 6 they're going to do something more with the widgets in the pull down, mm-hmm. And I don't think that long term those widgets can live in the pull down alone. And it would make a lot of sense to me that you would be able to position those widgets on the home screen, taking up the full width of the screen, maybe, I don't know. But if you could have those interspersed with icons, I don't know how that would work exactly. I'm not a UI expert, but I hope that they don't long term that those widgets don't only live in that pull down because they're useful and they're cool. And obviously, we want to see developers be able to take full advantage of those, and you don't want them just buried up in that curtain. Do something with that.
Yeah, I mean, they'll have to rethink their home screen experience though, because I mean,
yeah,
right now it's just app. With Android, there's a separation between home screen and app drawer.
Right.
I think that Apple doesn't want to have that separation, but I mean, how would you manage widgets? You need some way to do that.
Right.
They're right up against the ragged edge of like what they can do with the current. I mean, we've talked about this a bunch, right? But it seems like if they're going to go to the larger screen, if they go to the 4-inch screen and all they do is add an extra row of icons, and give out the APIs to like have a stretched app area and whatever, and that's it, I will be very unhappy, because like that extra half inch of screen space, I think will really show like, okay, this is tired compared to what other UIs are doing right now.
So one thing that I would point out, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that this is an unusually long amount of time between the last iOS preview event and now, right? Like it's been a long time. So I'm sure we'll see that.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, because I think the last event was in maybe March 2011 for iOS 5, something like that.
Yeah, it was thereabouts.
Yeah, so they'll obviously show that at WWDC. I'm hopeful that, considering the amount of time that has lapsed since the last iOS event, that it's going to be kind of a pretty significant version bump, and we'll see some cool things. All they need to do to make me happy is make the stupid 72-degree and sunny weather icon do something else. Just show me. That's it. Just show me the local weather. I will become an iPhone user for life. Especially now that Sparrow is out. Like I can make do without notifications. It's not the end of the world. But the email experience on iOS is of course terrible. But then again, like I was saying earlier, you have the web view, which is actually very good. But now that you have Sparrow, give me live icons. I'm good to go. Never touch Android or Windows Phone again. That's not true, obviously. But no, I mean, I'm sure. I mean, look, I've owned every iPhone that has ever come to market. I'm sure I'll own the next iPhone, and how long I remain on that iPhone is going to depend almost solely on the software, not on the hardware. Because the 4S is still a really fantastic device. The only complaint I can really lodge, well, two complaints. One is lack of LTE, and two is the small screen. But neither of those are deal breakers to me if the software is perfect. And I think
I would actually say the screen is a deal breaker for me at this point.
Well, even at that resolution,
you can adapt to 3.5 inches, but every time you put it right next to another display, you're kind of like, oh, why don't I have that bigger one? There's so much more information on it. I can read so much more.
Yeah, fair enough.
It does help that there's no lag on iOS, so like dragging stuff around to get more information. You don't have like it's always exactly paper movement with your finger.
Right. Right.
And you off frame, I'm moving and pretending like I'm scrolling an iPhone. It's amazing. It's blowing my mind. It makes me want to switch back, honestly. So that helps. I don't know. I think they need to move.
There's another thing.
It's embarrassing that they're
to Chris's point about excitement. A couple of retweets I've seen in my Twitter stream, particularly from Steve Troughton-Smith, were from WWDC attending developers. And they were actually looking at the WWDC schedule, which is Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference. It just got released. The keynote will be on June 11th. It lasts between June 11th and June 15th. And the thing that they were actually looking at was how many sessions there were for developers which were to be announced. Because that is actually their metric for telling how much is going to be new and exciting. And there are a bunch, apparently. So we can look forward to some new hotness. Just don't know what yet.
I'm
when
going
is WWDC?
to reach.
It's really soon.
Yeah.
June 11th?
It's coming right up.
2
But
weeks
unfortunately,
away.
Vlad, I'm going to have to reach through the video feed and punch you in the face for saying new hotness. I draw the line with that phrase. I just can't get down with that phrase. I'm sorry.
I wish we could sing that up
with
between
Sweet
us.
Kicks and talking about Fast and the Furious for a half hour a day, but new hotness can't handle.
No, not half an hour a day, Dieter. It's going to be 90 minutes a week. Big difference.
Oh,
Chris, I am going to invoke something.
Every 20 minutes, that would be terrible.
I am going to invoke something. Men in Black 3, I have been led to believe, is in cinemas over in the United States. And the term new hotness, as everybody knows, was invented by Will Smith in Men in Black 1. Therefore, because Men in Black, there is a Men in Black movie in theaters at the moment, I am technically allowed to use new hotness without sounding old and busted.
Sure, I'll let it slide this once.
Okay, well, you actually bought that one. I'm glad.
Yeah. I'm not letting it slide, but I'm not letting it slide in the same way that you don't yell at your grandpa for calling somebody a hep cat. It's just not his fault.
Okay, that was a bit
I'm sorry. Take it back. Have we discussed everything? I mean, I was gone for half the podcast listening to Insane Fire Alarms. Is there anything else that you guys want to hit quick before we sign off for the end of our first show? Yes.
Yes. I don't think that we can sign off without talking about the renewed Facebook phone rumors.
Yes.
This is so there have been Facebook phone rumors on and off for 18 months at least. And I think, where there's smoke, there's fire. I don't think it's plausible at this point that there isn't anything going on. I think that at the very least, Facebook is exploring this idea. I think that, famously over the past few months, as they've gone through their IPO, they've been talking a lot about the fact that they haven't found a monetization model for mobile yet. And it's very easy to believe that Facebook believes that that creating a smartphone, or at the very least a smartphone platform, might be central to that strategy. But man, getting into the smartphone market is not easy. Just ask Palm, just ask HP, just ask RIM. I mean, RIM is entrenched.
Ask RIM in a year.
Yeah. So I mean, I just don't know. And I know they're riding a wave of money and greatness right now, but it's going to be tough for them. It really is. Best case scenario, it's still going to be tough for them. I think that a very likely scenario for those guys is that they're going to pull an Amazon, right? They'll fork Android and go off and do whatever with it. And of course, Facebook, they already have an app platform. It's very easy to sort of build in your mind exactly how this would work. But yeah, I mean, well, so what? They're gonna launch exclusively on AT&T or Verizon or whatever, and then what? What's the next step after that? Are they,
Yeah, it's an issue, and it's also one.
The issue for me is what defines success for a Facebook phone. Like, if they need to get to 20% market share in order for this thing to count as a success, they're in a world of hurt. That's going to be super hard. But if they can just get it out there as a way to, I don't know, pressure other phone manufacturers to start, doing more with Facebook software and sign up more partnerships, and maybe they can use it as a way to gain some market share in certain emerging markets, or something targeted where they're not trying to compete in the same way that Windows Phone and Android and iOS are trying to compete, then that could be interesting. But I just don't know what that looks like.
That would be a really
and I don't know that Facebook does
thing.
either.
I don't understand how Facebook would be able to do that. What you suggest, Dieter, of competing without really competing. Like, if you're going to go after the smartphone market, like Chris says, you have to have a really, really clear idea of what the hell it is you're going after.
Yeah.
You can't just be, well, we're going to compete with you guys, but if you integrate Facebook really deeply into your phones, we'll compete less hard. And that will somehow be okay for Facebook's bottom line. It's going to be a really confused idea. I also don't understand how they're going to do it, because their problem is Facebook wants to be ubiquitous on mobile devices. I don't think Facebook can afford to not be on Android. I don't think it can afford to not be on iOS. And the same goes for Instagram, which is its price capture, its most recent and most expensive piece of software that it has captured. So you can't just introduce the Facebook phone and say, okay, you know what, we're going to keep Instagram exclusive to this phone, and this is what's going to give it a selling point. We're going to keep these Facebook features exclusive to this phone. You need to have your features all across mobile platforms. Everybody says this about Facebook and about how it's going to adapt to people moving to mobile devices. And Facebook's goal is ubiquity. And yet the goal with coming out with your own phone is exactly the opposite. It's to have some sort of exclusive special selling point. So how do you do that? How do you have something that's special about your phone while at the same time trying to have your platform on every phone?
Right. It could be smoke and mirrors, right? They could be trying to fake somebody, or they might be hiring some sort of ancillary crew to support the development of a Facebook phone through somebody like HTC, or maybe Apple wants deeper integration, and they're just, I think that there are lots of other explanations that don't ultimately lead to a quote unquote Facebook phone, Facebook branded phone on the market. I mean, that's exactly what happened with the Chow Chow, right? They and the status. That everybody thought that Facebook was working on a phone, and then boom, all of a sudden it turns out it's just a standard issue HTC Android device with a Facebook button on it. So who knows?
I mean, it's just this idea of Facebook going for its own phone doesn't compute for me. That doesn't mean that Facebook isn't intent on doing it. I just don't see where the motivation is. I don't see the clear idea and the clear goal behind it. I don't really think that Facebook's ultimate success as a company lies in monetizing the sale of devices. Whereas the previous strategy, the one that Mark Zuckerberg has been stating over and over again, is there won't be such a thing as just one Facebook phone. We want every phone to be a Facebook phone, which is a nice catchphrase. And that he wanted to distribute Facebook services as widely as possible. Like, that makes more sense to me. That is more intuitive to me. But then again, like you say, Chris, Amazon used to be all about that, just being platform agnostic. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it came out with the Amazon, with the Kindle Fire rather. And as you know very well, Chris, there will be an Amazon smartphone by the end of the year, right?
Oh, it's happening. It is absolutely.
Exactly.
I'm
exactly.
not
so Amazon
sure.
Used to be all about being platform agnostic.
I'm not convinced at this point that it's going to be end of year, but we'll see. It's definitely happening. Well, I mean, one way or another, there will be an Amazon.
I think that the opportunity is like within the Android ecosystem. Like, you don't have to beat Android and you don't have to beat iOS, but if you can be the de facto go-to answer within Android, the way that the Kindle Fire basically is for Android tablets, within a smartphone space. That's a real opportunity to make some real money, and you don't necessarily it's a smaller hill to climb than gaining market share just for your thing. And so I think Amazon and Facebook, they'd be kind of stupid not to see if they can give that a go, because it does actually give them some leverage to make sure that they get on other phones, because those other phones need to be competitive with the Facebook phone, and Facebook's perfectly happy to be frenemies with these other companies and say, yeah, sure, we'll make software for your phone while we continue to make it for our phone. They're happy to do that, I would think, unless their phone takes off insanely, and then they're like, no, only Facebook, for our own hardware. I think they'd be stupid to do that, though. I wouldn't expect them to.
Right. I mean, Facebook would need to own the smartphone market to do that.
I think back to the Kin, which it's on one level it's kind of easy to see how Facebook would say, well, we can do the Kin right. That I could see them having the hubris to go into that sort of attitude. And then I was thinking to myself, well, that's an expensive mistake because it cost Microsoft $500 million to buy Danger and $500 million to come out with the Kin. But in reality, that's pocket change these days, especially to a company like Facebook. I mean, if Facebook ultimately tried and failed and it cost them $1 billion, yeah, it'd hurt on the quarterly earnings report, but it's not going to end the company. That's for sure.
Right.
But that's all right. But then there's another question, which is, how is the Facebook phone by Facebook going to differ from all the Facebook phones that we've seen so far? Because, okay, the most famous ones are the HTC ones from last year, but let's not forget companies like Ink and some other smaller companies. I think Huawei might have done some, maybe not Huawei, but a whole bunch of companies have tried to tailor their low-end budget phones around the idea of being Facebook phones. So it was the Ink Cloud Touch last year, I believe, and there was another Ink phone, which were really cheap and affordable and were really centered around Facebook and were Android phones.
Yeah.
So my question is, if Facebook wants to approach the market from the affordable side of things, which kind of makes sense since you want to have the Facebook services available to everybody, it's already been done. How is it going to be different?
I have the answer. They are going to perfect.
Okay.
They're going to perfect the haptic poke using the new what is it called, the new haptics that are on like the they debuted on that new Pantech tablet. They're gonna have that like really advanced poke haptics.
Does anybody poke anymore on Facebook? I don't know that poking is still done.
A super poke, whatever the case may be. I don't know what
Is there a
Facebook.
super poke?
Yeah, it was one at one time. It was like one of the most successful Facebook apps, if not the most successful. So
and now it's just Farmville.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, that's the thing.
Chris,
If they do a Facebook phone, no, it needs to run Flash because they need to be able to, or they need Zynga. They have to develop it with Zynga and get HTML5 Facebook apps fully up on it. If the Facebook phone doesn't run Facebook games, it's a total failure.
Right. Yeah, that's sad.
I'm serious.
No, yeah, absolutely. Sad, but
that's a good point, actually.
Yeah.
I thought Diesel was trolling, but that's a really good point.
Yeah. Sometimes you can troll and have a good point at the same time.
Which is, I think, the perfect sentiment to end the inaugural Verge Mobile Show on, trolling and sincere at the same time. If you want to send us an email, you can. It is mobileshow@theverge.com. Totally set that up. Otherwise, we are also on Twitter. I am at Backlon. Vlad is at Vlad Savov. Chris is at ZPower, and we are all at Verge. So catch us next week. We'll be on video again. It'll be awesome. Thanks so much for listening and watching.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys.